Aaron popped out and he popped in a minute. There you go. And we got Aaron Olinger. What's up, everybody?
Okay.
Glad you're able to tune in. We've got another interesting show for you for tonight. Before we get started, though, everybody hit that like button. That way we get this show out on the proper algorithm and get it out to as many people as possible. So just when we thought the U.S. and Iran was going to step back off the edge for a minute, the situation changed again, and the U.S. has launched new strikes against Iran after reported attacks on commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. So tonight we're going to answer a couple questions. Um, we just watched this ceasefire fall apart, which we've been saying for the past couple weeks was not going to make it to the 60 days in the first place. And what are we actually watching here? Are we watching a controlled pressure before another round of negotiations, or is this going to be the end to all ends and they're not they're not dealing with anything, no deal, and watching what's going on after that? So what really changed? So U.S. Central Command announced strikes more than 80 Iranian targets, and a lot of those targets included air defense systems, combat and control facilities, coastal radar installations, anti-ship batteries, and more than 60 IRGC naval boats operating near the Strait of Hormuz. So the U.S. also revoked the waiver permitting certain Iranian oil sales, linking the move to attacks on commercial shipping. And President Trump um, also said that this MOU/ceasefire is over, while indicating negotiations could still resume under different circumstances. A lot of the reports has indicated that Iran has launched missile and drone attacks against U.S. facilities in Bahrain, Kuwait, following the U.S. strikes. And multiple major outlets has also reported this as well, but details regarding the damage and the casualties are still um, hit and miss. They're not really giving out a lot of that information. But what has been confirmed so far is that the U.S. strikes on 80 Iranian military targets. Um, U.S. objective um, started as protecting international shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, which that has been a constant problem since the MOU was actually signed, because it was supposed to be that 60-day grace period where the strait was completely open and being able to move back and forth. But we've seen that there has been several commercial ships that's been hit for various reasons, and one of them was being that they were trying to take the route that the U.S. was giving them to go around Oman instead of going all the way up and over like they wanted to. So they also hit a couple ships here in the past few weeks, which is every time they do that, missiles go flying their way, and then it kind of calms down for a little bit again. Um, but what's still unconfirmed right now is the exact battle damage on both of them. Precise casualties from these latest strikes, any long term Iranian military response, and whether this formal diplomatic talk that we all have kind of seen for the past couple of weeks, is that going to continue, or is that going to completely cave in on itself? Which right now it looks like it pretty much caved in on itself. Um, Aaron, I know you had quite a bit on it. You said you've been up all night on this, and I know Mike has too. So um, I'm pretty sure you both got a lot to say on this. So I'm gonna turn both of you loose and let you go first, Aaron.
Okay. Well, Iran has changed its targeting, which to me that's kind of scary because before we purposely been avoiding their infrastructure and their water treatment plants and power plants and things, but as of today, Iran has changed their targeting and they're considering going after power plants and oil refineries in the GCC, which is the Gulf Cooperation Council. It's made up of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE, Oman, and Qatar. I know last night when I was up about 3 in the morning, Bahrain and Kuwait both was fighting off about 85 attacks that was coming into their country. Some of them was targeting U.S. bases, but others were other targets as well. And they were shooting down some of the drones and missiles, but I don't think they got all of them. I did see between 1 o'clock and 3 in the morning what appeared to be evacuation flights that were taking off and was flying toward the mountain areas. Um, I guess they were flying out their VIPs to the bunkers up in the mountains, trying to get them out of the areas that they know are going to be bombed. But the leadership was definitely running for the hills. And once the planes got up in the air for a few minutes, the transponders turned off. So you could see on the radar screens that I was looking at that were live, you could see those planes just vanish. And at first I thought our jets were shooting them down, but later I found out that they were turning off their transponders to try to get past. And Trump says he's basically done talking. He don't trust the Iranians anymore. He said they'll go into a meeting, make a deal, and as soon as the Iranians come out, they walk straight up to the press and deny everything that they agreed to during the meeting. I did see this morning, up until closing, the Dow Jones went down 576 points today. And just so you know how significant that is, if the Dow takes an 800 to 1,000 point drop, that's one full year of retained earnings for a corporation that's been lost. And they were just a little bit over half today, which there was no surprise there. There's a guy called Gerald Salente. He's a trends forecaster and business consultant. He makes predictions about global markets and other important events. He says that when the economies of the world start to fail, when all else fails, they will take you to war. And he feels that we're about to go into full-scale war. Trump said that the attacks were punitive in nature because of Iran attacking 2 ships. He also said that we're going to continue to hit them even tonight. Overnight, they're talking about hitting them all night tonight. But Trump did indicate that our targeting is about to change, because he did say today that he doesn't want to, but if we have to, we're going to start taking out Iran's power plants and their desalination plants, which is their water. So we're going to be going after the main stuff the same way as Iran is threatening to go after with the GCC. I know that sirens were sounding last night in Kuwait and Bahrain. I know Trump slapped the sanctions back on today. And just so people would know the difference, you have the regular Iranian military. Those are called Artesh. That's their regular military. Their fanatical branch is called IRGC, and our IRGC seems to be trying to run the show right now. Let me see. This is important. Iran is calling for a NATO summit, which is being held in Turkey right now. They're calling for it to be bombed. So if there's any cell organizations operating inside of Turkey, Iran definitely said today that they want that NATO summit to be bombed. But the punitive damage behind setting off a single bomb there could bring all of NATO against Iran. They could be biting off more than they could chew. Yes, Iran is in a position to hit water treatment plants, power, and the petroleum refineries and all the GCC, which would bring down the entire world's economy. That's the last hand that they got to play. And they could probably achieve that because they're using the satellite aiming technology that's coming from China. China is lending them one of their satellites to help make their drones and their airplanes, their missiles more accurate. Now, where did China get that satellite technology from? Aiming technology from the Clinton administration. And I was hot when they gave it to them. Chinese donated so much money to them that they made China, they gave them favored nation trade status back then. And China started shipping toys, cosmetics, all kinds of stuff in here. But what came out later was that everything in the toys down to the lipstick had lead in it. And it was messing a lot of people up. And then we had to stop that after the Clintons got out of office. But they gave that satellite aiming technology because China was cozying up to us, saying that they would help us against Russia. And it was nothing but a big lie. Now China's sharing that same knowledge that they got from us with Iran to make their missiles more accurate. I know that Iran said that they hit they're going to hit 2 targets for every 1 target the United States hit as of today. Now, Iran had rebuilt 60% of their radar installations, but after the overnight attacks, they're going to have to start all over on their coastal radar stations because we leveled them. Iran is changing the targets. They're also setting up a kill list. Trump is number 1 on that list. Iran can stop food and water shipments to the GCC that they desperately need. Nothing will come up through there. Iran's still holding some major cards that they can play. They're not going to win no battles, but they can bring the world to its knees economically. And then, let's see here. And if the NATO summit gets bombed, I just can't believe that they would have the audacity to be wanting the NATO summit to be bombed and be calling for it today. They did announce that their leader, the IRGC leader, Kazeni, he was killed in the U.S. airstrikes that occurred yesterday. Now, Iran has racked up a kill ratio of 54,000 protesters in their own nation that they've killed. And the media seems to be blind to it or don't want to report on it. And again, I'm going to reiterate, the Kurds are currently fighting the Iranians. They have invaded them. But Turkey at the NATO summit asked Trump not to give them air protection and not to arm the Kurds. And the Kurds have no chance of winning without U.S. help. They'll just get wasted the same way that those 54,000 protesters got killed. Then Turkey also wants the latest from NATO. They want those F-35 fighters. But I personally believe if you give F-35s to Turkey the way they're cozying up to the Soviets and Chinese, they'll turn one over to them. And then that system won't be worth a damn when the Soviets and the Chinese figure out how to defeat it. And right now, Turkey is currently taking over Syria, and they're trying to make it into their proxy. So, there's no shortage of news in the Middle East right now, and it's definitely going to get worse. And I don't think the nations of the world that's waiting on oil can afford to wait much longer. But I'll turn it over to you, Mike.
Yes, sir. Well said. So, a few things I want to talk about real quick is first is the reason why these 3 vessels that were struck happened is because this is the designated line, the shipping route that Iran is trying to implement. And as you guys can see, it goes all the way up through the tip top of the strait, and then it actually cuts through between one of their island and Kesem Island. And the reason why they're also doing that is they're able to actually, if this were to go through and stay this way, they would be able to implement tolls very easily this way. Now, the 3 ships that were hit were actually this lower track. You guys can barely see it, but it hugs Oman. And those 3 got struck right over here because they took the Oman and / United States route. And so that's why we're seeing the attacks that we're seeing right now. Now, there was the retaliation and then a retaliation after that kind of thing where Bahrain got hit and all this stuff. Now, Bahrain is actually getting involved in the fight now. And they're saying, you know what? we're gonna defend ourselves too. And so they started firing, I believe today, back at Iran. And then another thing I want to point out: 2 minutes ago from Al Jazeera, 2 minutes. Breaking: U.S. forces have bombed a railway bridge outside the city of Akala. I don't know how to say it correctly, but and not only this, this is, I guess they were firing at the bridge there because there is a bridge in the background that I actually saw the little picture to. There is a bridge in the background, but I guess they actually hit their railway. So that just happened right now. So I just wanted to give you guys some breaking stuff that was happening.
Yeah, that was something that just now happened, correct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Pull that picture up that you just had of that showed the strait.
Sure. Give me a second. Let me bring it back up here. 3, 2, 1. Boom.
That's a great picture, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
I got it from NBC.
Okay, so we're looking at this route here. It looks like they want you to come all the way up and then cross over into to basically they can sit there and do the tolls and basically like checklists as to who comes around. Now, with what they had in this MOU, then the strait was supposed to be clear for the next 60 days.
True.
So why would this even matter to them? If you're actually supposed to be doing this the right way, why would this even matter as to which way they came? As long as they, as long as what nothing going on, this is the agreement that you had. So by you doing this, you're already violating the agreement already. Because it seemed like what you're doing here is like, okay, if we train everybody to do it this way, then by the time the 60 days run out, they know this is the way to do it.
And then they would be able to lock in how they want to do their tolls and all of that. Yep. They were preparing themselves for the 60 days afterwards.
Right. So you kind of leading the cart before the horse, you know what I mean? Because there was no agreement actually set up dealing with this yet. This here is supposed to be still open, so it didn't matter how they made it into the strait, as long as they did. You know what I mean?
Right.
There was nothing that was actually making them have to do that. You know what I mean? So, so that was already a violation already. That
right.
That was more or less like a repetitious thing. Like if everybody starts doing it now, then when this 60 days is up, then they know that they got to continue to do this. If you decide not to do this and take this U.S. route that they're telling you to do, then we're going to hit it.
It's the same thing with politics. When you get nomenclature is very important. I think everybody knows that. Words are very important. And the way that politicians especially will start using words, even though it's not like it can be a little extreme, but people don't correct it. And then all of a sudden, boom, now that's the standard now. And so that's why, words are very important, especially when we're talking about something to the level of this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me ask you both a question. Who do you think loses leverage now based on what's going on right now? Who do you think loses leverage?
Man, that's hard one to call, because if we reopen the strait, we give Iran their way, they're going to pick and choose who they're going to let through that strait, who's friendly to them, and everybody else can go to hell, basically. And rest of the nations can't afford it. If we press them and pound them in the ground, we're not going to get all the IRGC with them hiding underground. They're still going to be able to launch on the GCC. And if they take that out, the global economy is going to go into Great Depression Part 2, and it'll be far worse than what the Great Depression was the first time, because all the countries and their debts and everything that they have. Right now, there's no oil coming out of there, so most of the GCC countries can't even pay their debts to other nations right now, which that's greatly affecting them. And then you look at Japan, you look at Korea, their money's losing value because they're having to shut down. China's even shutting down. I think they're only operating at 60% efficiency right now. They can't run as many hours producing for the world. And then stuff that would come out of there that would even come over here is no longer coming. And we're going to start seeing those shortages next month. So, man, that's a hard call to make. I think everybody's going to lose in this case, if you want to be honest.
Yes, that was going to be my answer. I was waiting for you to say that. I think everyone's going to lose. Papa Penguin, by the way, I'm a very illiterate fuck over here, so I'll try my best. But thank you for the 30 months. He says there was a ceasefire. Doesn't a ceasefire require everyone to be on the same sheet of music? The Iran kerfuffle is just everyone doing whatever they want, like disorganized, garbastic, amphibian maggot shit. Well, I thank you very much for that, Papa Penguin, as well with the 5 spot, saying the leader of the free world talking about targeting infrastructure is a genie you cannot put back in the bottle, which is true, by the way. And we're watching infrastructure be struck actually just a few minutes ago, right?
Yeah, I think Papa's talking more about the power and
electric and water, yeah, specific.
Yeah,
but yes,
those two. Yeah, right. So to the question that I had asked about who loses leverage, I think it kind of goes back and forth, because if you take Iran, for instance, so Iran would risk losing basically diplomatic leverage when it's viewed internationally as responsible for the attacks for the commercial shipping. So they're going to lose points on that end, because they can make it harder to gain support for the sanction relief and the negotiations and all that stuff, because of what they're doing there, and the fact that they're not adhering to the full opening of the strait. Now, at the same time, the U.S. can risk losing diplomatic support if the conflict extends beyond what the allies consider as a proportional response. So everyone loses in this crisis, depending on how much it escalates, and does this here expand everything to like a wider regional conflict? It could go either way, you know what I mean? So like as Aaron was talking about earlier, of course the stocks always take a hit. You know what I mean? The stocks going back and forth. Of course, your gas price is gonna go up. Now we have said it's gonna be a stop. Right now, ain't nothing gonna be flowing. You have places now, including the U.S., that's been talking about some of the places over in Oklahoma is at risk of hitting tank bottom. And so that's going to be something else that we're going to have to not we, but they're going to have to figure out on this end, as to, we're exporting so much oil, but we're losing here on the back end. Maybe we need to slow this down here, build our reservoirs back up with our own stuff. You know what I mean? Because we export way more than what we keep anyway. Another thing that took place prior to this was there was a whole funeral going on during this time. So you had the funeral for Iran's late supreme leader. And that was one of the largest public gatherings in decades. So they had millions of people who showed up and participated in these ceremonies that spanned across different cities and actually went all the way over into Iraq.
Yeah, it's going on right now.
Right.
In Iraq right now. Yep.
Now, being that you had all these large crowds, they kept on their end, they were saying that they had all this support because all the people showed up. That doesn't automatically mean because people showed up that they support what's really going on here. Now, there was a lot of footage from the funeral that showed groups of people that was chanting, death to Trump and calling for revenge, burn the American and the Allied flag.
Death to America.
Yeah, and those demonstrations have been widely reported. Of course, dealing with the media, they always going to post that anyway, because it's always that, you know, good guy,
Divisive.
bad guy, us versus them. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And it goes both ways, because they do the same thing over there. as well.
Absolutely.
But like a lot of things, though, we have to kind of separate, you know what I mean, to kind of put a little bit of clarity to it, because there's a difference between the official Iranian government message opposed to what the funeral attendees were going on. Plus, you got the radical groups, and then your everyday Iranian citizens. So everybody has different views as to what's
Sure.
going on here. And then also, you also got to think, because I've heard a lot of the different broadcasts. They kept talking. Some would say Muslims, some would say Islamic extremists, and that's one of the biggest mistakes people make, because that is two different things, two different groups. You know what I mean? And
Very true.
a lot of people will automatically take, okay, everybody's Muslim, so everybody that
Is therefore a
right
radical
is
terrorist. Right.
therefore a terrorist, and that's
Mhm.
not the case.
That's true.
So, so a Muslim basically is basically someone who follows Islam. Now you got nearly 2 billion people around the world that identify as Muslim, and a lot of these people work, raise their families, obey the law, reject terrorism, and just like members of any other religion, just like Buddhists, Christians, whomever. Okay, you always gonna have the good side, and then you're gonna have the bad side, no matter what religion you have. You know what I mean? But I see a lot of times that when we're watching a lot of this stuff on TV, they kind of try to centralize it and make it all like one group. You know what I mean? And we have to put that out there, that these are two completely different groups. Now, Islamic extremists, now that's someone that adopts the extreme interpretation of Islam to justify political views, violence, terrorism, whatever. Now, those extremists reject the mainstream Muslim scholars, and they claim that they own the violent ideology that came along with it. It was like you got basically how like somebody would interpret the Bible, and you have one group that went across this way, and then you got another group that pulled all the bad stuff out of it and say, okay, we just deal totally with this. You know what I mean? So you got two different ones. So you have like the Islamic State, you have Al Qaeda. Now these organizations don't represent Islam as a whole. It only represents the extremist part of it. You know what I mean? So the only reason why I'm saying that is because just to put a little bit of clarity to it, because sometimes when you listen to stuff and they're talking about, Muslims and these Islamic extremists, these are two different groups. You know what I mean? It started as one, but it has its own separation within that. You see what I'm saying? So I didn't want to get that confused with people, because a lot of times that picking it up will automatically give you a different perception as to what you think is really going on up there. So I just wanted to put that out real quick.
That's a great point, Bishop.
Did you got something you want to add on to that? Or
I do want to talk about the funeral a little bit. Trump basically told them he would give them a week that they can get that funeral in. And at first, the Iranians wasn't trusting Trump, but then they looked and saw when our 4th of July was, and they figured that we wouldn't attack during the holiday. So they went on and took a chance. Now, the news reports are saying that 80% of the Iranian population wants a regime change. They want the IRGC and their leadership out of there. But when I looked at that funeral, and it was kind of a propaganda funeral to me, where he was chanting death to Israel and America, I didn't get that feeling from the funeral that 80% of the population wants that IRGC up out of there. Well, what do you guys think?
No, I agree with you. If they're coming out with the number 80%, I would say they're highly misinformed, or they're just spinning propaganda. Truly, I think that if we're going to be honest about the numbers, where I think truly it probably is, just on an unbiased, just objective thinking. Now, of course, this is speculation here, everybody, but I would assume anywhere from maybe 30% that want a total regime change, maybe 40%.
And then
Maybe.
that 30 or 40%'s got to keep their mouth shut, because if you tell the wrong one, they're going to come and attack you. You know, I mean, they
Right.
didn't kill 54,000 protesters already.
Well, not
So,
only that, but how many did they imprison? So,
yeah,
yes, they killed 54,000, but they imprisoned like 100 more thousand. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, yeah, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that was the next question that I was going to ask. Is like, after this funeral is over, who becomes the long-term power inside of Iran? Now,
Mm.
think about what it is I'm getting ready to say here. So the funeral isn't just about mourning; it was also about who controls the future of Iran. Now, right now, the biggest power centers that we're watching right now is you have the new supreme leader, you have the IRGC, and then you have President Mossad. Now, with the president, he may have the public face of diplomacy right now, but the real question is whether even he has enough power to negotiate these other hardliners to keep that control, to keep that direction going on. Now, you have the IRGC. Now, they're basically the military superpower in all of that. And in a crisis, they may become more important than the politicians because they control the weapons, the
Absolutely.
international security, the missile forces, and the regional proxy networks. So could they overpower the president? Absolutely.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And then this new supreme leader, who was the son of the past Ayatollah that nobody has even seen. So you don't know whether he's even
Alive
or
or
unalive, whatever. You know what I mean?
right.
Last time that they was reporting on him, they said that he had sustained some injuries or whatever, and that
Yeah, he's an amputee like me now, so
right,
supposedly,
they
you
said.
know. But then we haven't heard from him. The only thing that we have heard is when supposedly he sent a note to one of his officials, and then they read it on their Iranian state TV. Which I mean, you take that at for what it is, right? In that aspect. But you're right, though, Archbishop. When it comes to their structure, it's interesting because the president over there, at least, is kind of like it's like the vice president of a motorcycle club, right? He is dealing with the the inside politics within his chapter or whatever the case is. Kind of the same thing with their structure with the president, and then their religious leader, which is the Ayatollah, the new successor or whatever. They deal with the outside entities of protecting their beliefs and stuff like that. So yes, the religious leader absolutely outranks the president by a billion times, essentially. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it'll, just like you said, they're the ones that can make that decision or not. It's not really up to the president for shit.
Right, exactly. So the question is not just who has the title there. The question is who has the guns, who controls the streets, who controls the intelligence services, who controls the overall message. You know what I mean? Because eventually, this here, where you got these three different fractions here, I don't see that even staying too much longer. Anyway, because you got three different fractions there, and everybody wants control. You know what I mean? So, like I said, you can already scratch the supreme leader part because nobody's seen him. You don't know whether he's alive or dead. You don't know. So only thing that you hearing right now is from the president and from the IRGC, and they going back and forth. You know what I mean? So it's going to eventually become a power struggle back and forth as to who wants what. You know what I mean? that's where I think a lot of this stuff is dealing with. You got one side that's saying, okay, don't settle for this. We want this, this, and this. And then you got this side here was like, okay, well, maybe we can just, just take this money here and go on, give them this side of it. No, we're not doing that. You see what I'm saying there? So you're gonna have that power struggle, that back and forth. So I think that the regional tensions will continue far after this funeral. You know what I mean? And that whole you're gonna have that balance there with this military pressure on one end and diplomacy on this end, and they're gonna struggle back and forth with it. What do you think, Aaron?
I think you're absolutely right. And that's the scary part, because the rest of the nations of the world that do not produce oil cannot wait another 30 days. Their economies are starting to collapse. Their money is losing value. I feel sorry for those people, because resources are going to go beyond the normal person's ability to be able to afford them. I mean, even right now in America, because of the lack of fertilizer, I would strongly stress people grow gardens right now. And this isn't a suggestion. I mean, this should be automatic, that what you should be doing. Like I said, in the past, we had a choice of whether we wanted to prep or not. Now we're reaching a point in time, there's no other choice. Food's going to start going up here, and the only way you're going to be able to cut your food bill is if you can grow it and raise it. So people better wake up. These shortages are going to start to impact us. The food price is already predicted to go up next month, and again at the end of October when the crop reports come in. And when Christmas time comes around, we always see that food goes up again. And the average person is just getting priced right out of the market. You can't afford good meat anymore. So they're going to give you this lab grown meat that will give you cancer somewhere down the road. But
Yeah.
They got these genetically modified organism crops and stuff that they're willing to give you to eat. And they don't want us here. They want to get rid of us. They don't need us no more. So they're going to reduce world population one way or the other.
People are a liability.
Yeah.
That they're a liability, and they only bitch and complain, and that's kind of the way that the government looks at it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're very right on dependency, whether it be or supplies or any of these things. It could be oil, it could be any of these things that we're going to see these prices go up. It's going to be same thing with, of course, with groceries and just normal goods and stuff. But yeah, we're going to see it at the gas pump. We're going to see the prices that we saw during this last, round of, right before the MOU. It's going to go to that price and higher, unfortunately. It just depends how long we're going to be in this mess before we get to the point where we get some sort of deal made here.
And let's say that we made a deal today. It's going to take years for them to rebuild everything that's been destroyed, both in Iran and the GCC. They're not going to have the same volume of output. And not only do you have to have the output, you got to have a surplus, because you got to make up for what has not been shipped out to the world that the world needs right now. So the fact that I know that this is going to go on, that's scary to me. But to each his own.
You're still on mute, AB. I was just about to ask him what's his thoughts on this, but anyways.
Yeah, I was so do you think after all this is transferred, okay, so we got this is going on now. And here for the past couple of times we've had bombings go on, and then they stop, and then they talk about they going back to negotiations or whatever.
It's just a cycle.
Right. So do you think that this is like after they do this little spiel here, okay, are we gonna go back and try to talk again and try to make some more negotiations, or are you just gonna call this an end? Because like I said, the biggest thing that we had going on that was going back and forth was the whole trust issue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, neither side trusted each other anyway. You know what I mean? So being that you have this going on now, do you see them actually going back trying to start another negotiation, or do you see this as like, okay, we're done with this?
I'm going to say, watch what happens with Carg Island. That's going to be a key escalation point.
Mhm.
The Marine ship, and I can't think of the name of it, that's got the Marine Invasion Force on it, just got moved up close to the aircraft carrier. And they're actually talking about taking Carg Island. I would just bomb it and level it. That's 90% of Iran's oil exports right there. You could put them in a hurt locker for 10 years or more if you took out Carg Island. But if you're going to try to take it, you're going to waste American lives trying to take it, then you're counting on 80% chance that Iran wouldn't bomb it themselves. But there's always that 20% chance that some fanatics might, and turn that place into hell on earth when everything starts exploding around you with all the oil that's around you. I mean, if you're going to take it, you must be thinking about giving it back to them somewhere down the road. Otherwise, you just level that damn place and be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll stop there.
So to answer your question, AB, is I do think that there's going to be this continued cycle until it eventually happens, where we go and Connecticut strike them and do a whole bunch of ruining their shit, and then force them to the table. Then we get to this point of some sort of MOU or some sort of understanding of a ceasefire, kind of, until we get to that point. I think that is the way that the United States is going to play this. They're just going to keep doing this rigmarole roundabout because we'll just come back and fuck you up every time, and we will. And so that's the mindset, unfortunately. And whether that be right or wrong, it just objectively is what's happening here.
Mm-hmm. I think it's possible. I think it's very possible. But I know that now this is just my point of view. Okay. I would say it was possible, but you will have to hit a more tougher position with it. Because the administration argued that the military action and diplomacy was supposed to have been working hand to hand together, that enforcing the consequences that strengthens negotiations. Now, a lot of people argue that this new strike may make Iranian leaders less willing to negotiate because they're saying, okay, everything we do, you're going to turn around and bomb us. So, why should I even trust? So whether the talks continues depends on the decision made both by Washington and Tehran over the next coming days, because sometimes military pressure is used to force negotiation. The question is whether it creates actual leverage that you can use or destroys the whole trust cycle, which ends it all altogether. Now, what Aaron was talking about before, if you pull that up one more time of Carg Island.
Oh, yeah, I got you.
Yeah, but don't zoom it all the way down, but just zoom it enough to where you can see where it's at. Yeah, go in a little bit more. Okay, so everybody sees that right there. Now you got to go all the way through the strait to get to Carg Island. Now there is other ways that you can get to it. You can go through Kuwait. There's 100,000 different ways you can get to it. Taking back channels to get.
But it is very tucked in and very secure in
right.
its little position there. Yes.
But if you put forces there, being the close proximity, and you putting people there, that's basically a sitting trap. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
They would sit there and basically, you wouldn't have to personally, the U.S. wouldn't have to come in and bomb it. They would bomb it themselves because they knew you were there and take it off the map. You know what I mean? Because you had forces there.
Yeah, because that's a target that's not even moving. All they have to do is align their missiles just real quick at Carg, hit that spot, and boom, that's sitting duck right there.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. All day, every day, you just keep sitting there hitting that same spot until nothing else moved. That would be a huge disadvantage for you to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now, if you're gonna go through, if you're gonna hit something, right now we got this whole back and forth thing going on. Okay, so you hit them for a little bit and you stop. Then you hit them a little bit, like, okay, y'all ready to talk now? Okay, no, I'm gonna hit you again.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
And you're going back and forth.
Well, slap in the face. You ready to speak? Not yet. Okay, boom
Right.
again. All right, now you ready?
My opinion, if you're gonna do it, just do it and get it over with. You know what I mean? If you're gonna hit them and hit them hard, do it, get it over with. You know what I mean? But this back and forth, like, okay, we hit you for a little bit, and then we'll stop, and then everybody regroup, and then we're gonna hit you again, and then we're gonna stop, and we're gonna regroup, and we're gonna keep going back and forth. And you talk about this MOU, which everybody knew. I said it before, Mike. You said it too, that the MOU from the beginning was bullshit.
It's
We
garbage. Yeah.
We called it day one. Bullshit. Not
Yep.
gonna happen. You know what I mean? This was like, okay, well, we're gonna agree to talk about the talks, but we're not gonna agree on nothing. You know what I mean? We're gonna promise you this. You're gonna get this money. We're gonna release these sanctions. This. Basically, trying to pacify, buy time. Basically, what this was, it was it was an agreement to buy time. Time enough for you to restock, and then once you got back to where you needed to be, to where, okay, say something else, and I'm gonna smack you in the mouth. That's what they did.
Yeah. Yeah. It came down to logical conclusions, right? Where this is not stuff that, I mean, you have to also read the stuff that they're not telling you. Essentially, you have to read in between the lines, right? And when you lay it out like on the table and you're able to look at the facts objectively, and that's a hard point for a lot of people because they get aligned to a certain side one way or the other, and that's kind of the downfall of people. Is unfortunately people don't look at things objective, just going off of straight truth. And I'm glad that this panel right here always looks to go for exactly that, what is actually happening. So W to everyone here, man.
So with this one, of course, we're gonna keep our eyes glued to the news sections and not just. I mean, I've been finding more information on the European side news channels than I do here.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because they tell you very little over here. You click into some of these other ones, and they don't mind telling you what it is because what do they have to lose? You know what I mean? They just put it all out there. But we're going to keep an eye on all of this and see what happens. I mean, it's just going to escalate to be more of a regional thing. Is somebody really going to be stupid enough to try to go to Turkey and try to do something during the NATO summit? I think that if that happens there is all gloves is off at that point.
Of course.
If that happens. If you attempt it, you know what I mean? Even if you don't get nobody, but if you attempt it, all gloves is off. There is no more negotiation. And, you know what I mean? You can tell Jesus or Allah or whomever, whatever your problem is, when you see them face to face. You know what I mean? Just my opinion. Now, we're gonna go over to another story that few people are talking about, but it's a lot of stuff to it. But this whole thing is strange. It really isn't getting as much attention because of everything going on over here. But I want to talk about Mitch McConnell. And where is he? Is he alive? Is he gone? What's going on with it? So
3 weeks in the hospital.
Right. So there's a serious question that I'm asking here. It's talking about Mitch McConnell and his condition now. One side says that he's recovering and he's talking to other Senate leaders. The other side says that those statements are false and demanding proof. So some people are saying, some senators yesterday said that they had spoken to him on the phone and that they had talked about things. Some of the aides said the same thing. But then you have people like Laura Loomer that's been on Truth Social and all these other ones saying that she had information that Mitch McConnell is on life support, basically brain dead. And
that wouldn't surprise me.
Just sitting there. So you got this whole back and forth thing as to what's going on. Now, everybody knows back on June 14th, he suffered a serious medical emergency at his home in Washington, D.C. He was taken to the hospital.
Mhm.
Now, while his office did not publicly confirm the exact diagnosis, multiple news organizations have reported that he had
Cardiac arrest.
right, that he was in cardiac. Well, I was gonna say cardiac emergency, but yeah, cardiac arrest, which CPR was performed, and his office only stated that he was receiving excellent medical care and blah 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 blah. Now, that's all that you heard. This is going on 3 weeks now. You know what I mean? And there have been all these different reports going back and forth because there's a lot of silence there. You know what I mean? I've even heard that one of the reasons why they were not putting it out is because if they could keep it past a certain date, that they wouldn't have to do a special election in the state, all this other thing. So there's so many different things that's going on with this.
They're just trying to fucking get them there until January. It's so funny.
Well,
so funny.
I don't even think it's January. I think they said it was it like August 3rd?
Well, yes, and as long as they get to August 3rd, then they don't have to hold a special election or whatever. So they're stalling as much as possible. You know, it's obvious.
Right. So we don't know whether or not, when they're saying, well, yeah, I spoke to him and we talked about this, and this. It's kind of hard to believe when you first said that, when it first come out that this man was in cardiac arrest at his home. When that happens, if you don't have medical personnel there right then, you're on a ticking time clock at that point, because lack of oxygen, lack of brain function, you know what I mean? That happens going down the line. So even if they got him back there, you know what I mean? Let's say that someone was there and someone did provide accurate CPR and stuff like that and was able to keep oxygen levels up and stuff like that for them in the transport. Is that possible that he pulled through? Yeah, it's a possibility. But you don't know that. You know what I mean? And they really keeping this hush hush. You know what I mean? So you got some insiders that's kind of spilling the beans a little bit, but then you got the senators on this end saying that they having conversations with them, and then
we had a great conversation for 40 minutes. It was great,
Right, exactly. And then on the other side of it, you have his wife that takes off and goes to China, and she's saying that she was there for some stuff dealing with her family, and that there was that he had actually planned to be in China for some meeting or whatever. But what are you there for? You know what I mean? Because you don't have a job right now dealing with anything to where you need to be there having a special meeting with the vice president of China.
Right.
You know what I mean? That don't make sense. So you have a lot of talk dealing with that. So there's and then she was actually gone before this took place. But then they were saying, well, okay, well, why didn't she hurry back? You know what I mean? As soon as she heard the news that her husband just had this cardiac emergency and they had to ship him to the hospital, she stayed there. You know what I mean? So there's a
lot of things going on with that, right? And so
there's a lot of weirdness. There's a lot of fugazi going on right now dealing with this.
Yes. You know what I mean? And there may be absolutely scandalous shit going on with this. Now, something interesting about cardiac arrest, I did some research on this. When people go through cardiac arrest and then they get to the hospital, they actually, like, on a big level, I forget the number, it was like 90% of people make it to the hospital. It's like a huge number. But it's ironic how when the number flips completely once they get in the hospital. So they're alive, essentially, they're getting them saved to an extent, but then they like coming back from that is near nothing.
Right.
So just
See,
you
because what
know, and
happened?
it's totally possible that the dude's brain dead right now, and maybe even I mean, because there was a whole bunch of reports coming out of him being dead and stuff like this, dead at accusations and stuff. We confirmed that on reports as of right now that that's not necessarily the case, but we never know, in the aspect of what is being talked about or not being talked about, right? So
Mhm. See, but you also got to think about too that when first responders come there for a cardiac emergency or whatnot, if now let's just say for the sake of argument, being the fact that he was already ill, he had just came out the hospital prior, so maybe he had a home nurse there, you know, that that was actually able to provide CPR and give oxygen and whatnot until EMS got there. Now, of course, EMS going to hit you with adrenaline or atropine or whatever that's going to keep that heart running.
yep.
Them to get you from point A
Keep
to point B.
just keep sticking it for a minute,
Yeah, that's going to get you from point A to point B. That's why he said, like, yeah, they can make it through the squad, but once they get
Mhm.
to the actual hospital, totally different scenario.
Yes,
now,
the numbers now flip the opposite way where 90% of the time you might make it to the hospital, but 10% of the time you actually walk out of it.
right, and then at that point, it's easier to keep the heart beating as opposed to keeping oxygen to the brain. That's your problem right there. You can keep the heart beating, but if you don't supply enough oxygen to that brain, you're only going on minutes at that point.
Right.
I mean, so
Makes sense.
I'm talking about less than between 7 to 10 minutes, you can actually be brain dead. So without
yes, absolutely.
without proper oxygen. So you can get him there, heart still be pumping, but if your brain activity ain't putting out what it should be, even after you put them on a respirator, ventilator, all that, if that brain is not functioning the way it should be and not triggering on an EEG, then you are technically brain dead. You know what I mean? So this is a big I don't know. It's like a huge mystery here. You know what I mean? Which is crazy. You know what I mean? As to why would someone, even if let's just say, I hope that Mr. McConnell is okay. You know what I mean?
Of course.
I hope he's okay. I did have the pleasure of meeting the man when I was in DC a couple years ago.
Wow, that's cool.
When I went to that baseball game for the Republicans versus Democrats, and
he's the longest standing congressman, by the way, longest standing.
Yeah, I got to briefly, like a brief introduction when I was with Ted Cruz, and so I hope that everything is actually fine with him.
Sure.
On the other end, though, I wish that if it's not,
it needs to be
fine. Out. You need to do this the right way. Put it out there that the man is gone, and do the proper.
I agree.
Don't just hold him there for the sake of a vote or keeping a seat. You know what I mean? That's outrageous.
I agree. 100,000%. AB, you just nailed that. That's a big W, by the way.
So we closing to the end of this show. Of course, we got Aaron got another survival thing that he's going to bring up, and I'm gonna say my piece right now, and then when we go through, let Aaron do his thing, and then Mike, you
will send it out.
So as we close tonight's episode, I want to leave you with one final thought, and then I want to let Aaron do what he does. We live in a time when information travels around the world in seconds. But truth often takes much longer to catch up, as we all say. Headlines designed to grab your attention. Social media is designed to keep your attention, and neither is designed to help fully understand what's really going on. So this is why the dominant effect exists. Our mission here is never been to tell you what to believe. Our mission is to show the story, slow the story down, separate the speculation, provide the missing context, the missing components, and challenge all of us, including myself, to think critically before reaching any kind of conclusion. Whether tonight discussion about Iran, Mitch McConnell, China, the future of world events, Iran, what's going to happen, remember that every headline has a deeper story beneath it. The more informed we become, the better decisions we can make for ourselves, our families, and our communities. So if tonight's episode made you think, challenged your perspective, or even help you see something in a better light, something that you may have never considered before, then we've accomplished exactly what we did, exactly what we need to do every day on this show, and every week. That basically gives us the fuel to keep going and to keep pumping this out. So I appreciate you all and for coming out every single week. I appreciate the actual love and support that y'all give every week. Because that means to us a lot more than you actually think. And for the main thing this is like my key word now, follow the evidence. See where it takes you. Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay. Mike, give me that one picture I sent you.
Sure. Here it comes. There it is.
Yeah, this is the product I want to present today to everybody. You should always have two ways as a backup to back up in an event your power goes out or your stove goes out, that you can have some sort of way to be able to prepare food. Now, I'm going to assume everyone has a grill, either a gas grill or a charcoal grill, but I strongly would recommend this. It's the perfect backup. It's a 2-burner stove. They run between $50 to $100 where you get them from. And this is your classic stove. There's better models than this, but this basically did what I needed to do. Okay, Mike, take it down for a second.
Sure. Give me a second here. There we go.
Okay.
Boom.
Okay. It runs off of the Coleman 1-pound cylinders. Takes one to power the stove. If you remember in last week's show, the heating unit that I showed, the Big Buddy heater, ran off of 2 of these. Now, can you get stoves that run off of other fuels? Yeah, you can get one that runs off of white gas, butane, propane. There's many different types. But why stockpile so many different fuels when you can just buy one type and you're running not only your stove, but you're running your heater? But you got a 1-pound cylinder here. Now, let me get the unit out. Okay. As you can see, it's a stove. You have 2 independently run
Burners.
burner, yeah, that are controlled by these controls here. Now, the unit does come with this unit here. As you can see, it plugs in right here on the side.
And that's a
then
filter.
your propane screws right into it. These pieces right here are wind block panels. And I'm telling you, on a cold winter day when that wind's gusting or whatever, it blocks the wind from coming over top. And it's perfect to get that gas going to where you're able to ignite it. Closes up. It's very compact. It's very lightweight. Set that down for a second. Now, I do recommend you get a little igniter to be able to light it with. You can run one 12-inch skillet as well as a 10-inch skillet on top of that unit. You'll see single units that you screw a tank into, but by the time you cook one particular item and set it off to the side, and then you start cooking another item to have a complete meal, the first item then got cold. I like the idea of the 2 burners because I can cook 2 different items at the same time. This unit here has perfect airflow on it. I've used it in temperatures almost down to 0 and as high as 100 degrees. The gas flow is perfect. Let's see. And it runs on high. It runs at a temperature of about 20,000 BTUs. These tanks here on low will burn for about 4 hours, or you can get almost 90 minutes to 2 hours on high. And if you want additional accessories, they do make a metal box that sits over top of the 2 burners, and it's a stove that you can bake bread in or make biscuits in or something like that. Then they have a big grill that extends out that's Teflon that you can cook stuff on. But I mean, as long as I've got skillets, whatever I can cook on that grill, I can cook in them skillets. A tip I would like to recommend to you if you're working with a system like this is focus on stews, soups, and one-pot meals. One-pot meals would be like Dinty Moore beef stew or chili. That would be a one-pot meal that you're going to get all the calories that you're going to need. Now, safety on it, it's ventilation is mandatory on this unit. It's outdoor use only. Now, if you was afraid to be outdoors because we're in a shit hits the fan situation, I would strongly recommend that if you're going to cook it in your garage, you open that garage door or something because you got to have ventilation if you're going to be using this unit. You can stockpile the fuel cylinders, but you can also hook a 20-pound tank to it if you have to. But I strongly recommend that you keep those cylinders in a cool, dry place and away from direct sunlight. And then I strongly recommend that you test your gear and practice with it. Get this thing out, cook on it a few times. Make sure that you didn't buy a dud or don't have no defects. Check it out, practice with it, because you don't want to be learning the hard way during an actual emergency. You want to have experience that when you pull that out, you know exactly what you've got to do. Now, where can you purchase it at? You can get it at Amazon, Walmart. You can get them at Lowe's. Anywhere that's got a camping department or sporting goods department should have that unit, or maybe even a more expensive unit, because that's actually the cheapest one. They got different models that are better than that, but that one I found suits all my needs that I would have. So the Coleman 2-burner camp stove, the classic stove, is what I have. Great backup for those emergency times when the power might go down. And I'll stop there.
Well, the one thing I wanted to say, Aaron, that is really right. I don't know why I'm lagging, by the way. It just is what it is. You're going to have to deal with it. But the one thing that I think that you nailed was take it out and use it, right? Most people don't actually test their stuff a lot of the times. This is driving me nuts. Let me go ahead and reset my.
Let me say one more thing regarding it, too. Yes, you can get the Coleman stove, 2-burner stove that runs off of white gas. Now, a gallon of white gas, now you can get these in a pack of 6 versus a gallon of white gas. Now, a gallon of white gas is going to get you more cooking hours, far more than these will. But what I found out, and then that's what I first went with, was the white gas one. I got one brand new sitting in the box I ain't used in 10 years because 5 years in, when I went to check the cans, they were only half full and they had never been opened. Evaporation, I did not take that in consideration with the white gas. These will keep for 50 years so long as the seals remain intact.
50 years?
So that made me do the switch to propane versus white gas.
I didn't know the
I'll
shelf
stop with
life.
that.
The shelf life on that is 50 years. That's insane, actually. So that's something that I was trying to get across. I'm sorry that my camera was having a problem. And look, he couldn't even hear me. So it worked out great. But nonetheless, what he pointed out is something very important that I think a lot of us do is, and I'm sure that Aaron can confirm this, that a lot of times Americans will buy something that is to prepare yourself for the future, but then you leave it in the box. You leave it there. You don't touch it. You didn't even build it or whatever the case. Some things you need to like put together or whatever. And now the chaos goes down and you haven't tested it. You don't know how to use it. You've never. And so get familiar with these things that you are buying. You know, there are a lot of people here that actually hear us and say, hey, I'm going to buy that. And and I recommend exactly what you said is to use it, you know, break it out, actually use it, get familiar with your equipment that you're going to have for you know, survival level. Right. So I appreciated that when you pointed that out. So listen, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we can't thank each and every single one of you guys enough. Obviously, we cannot do this without you guys. Make sure you guys hit that like button, double tap that screen if you're on the vertical side. And listen, we'll be back here in 7 bad days. And of course, with another crazy story. So listen, there's a lot of big escalations that are going on in the Middle East in regards to the United States. Get ready for higher grocery prices, higher gas prices. Fill up your tanks now, kind of thing, you know, and try not to drive as many miles right now. So because it's about to go down. So anyways, with that being said, much love, honor, respect. We'll see you guys here in 7 days.